Okay, so in my segment, I'm going to take a look at Square, symbol SQ. Before I get into that, I want to take a quick step back. And as traders, we have to be able to wear multiple hats. We are scientists, we're analysts, and we're strategists. We have to be able to integrate these skills so that we can devise an objective methodology, apply that methodology to produce technical evidence, and then be able to convert that analysis into a trading plan. And that's what you're witnessing as the askSlim team goes through their process. There are no certainties. However, your methodology should put the odds of your trade setup in your favor, and then you have your money management rules to control your risk. So as Slim mentioned, I'm looking at Square here. I have a long side bias in a 2 to 4 week outlook. On the top here, I've posted a little sticky note that we focus on a lot here at askSlim, and that is our trade planning process, the questions, the outlook period, the directional bias, our key levels. And then once we have that sum of the evidence, does that then suggest we actually have a tradable edge? And then what signals are needed to suggest that setup is a go? So I'm on the weekly chart here of Square, and I'm going to step through why I have a long side or bullish bias. What is that technical evidence that is suggesting that this is the case at this time? So number one on the weekly chart, I'm going to actually back this up here so we can look at what happened here in Square, which had a massive sell-off that started in essentially 2021 of around August, and that lasted more than 9 months as it completed here out in about June, and then had gone sideways for about another year. And then we had basically a capitulation sell-off here that ended in late October. Well, what's happening now is that there has been a significant positive repair that has taken place in this most recent cycle that I'm going to zoom in on here, which is giving me the conviction of the overall bullish bias. So you can see here that we finished this cycle actually in a negative overall configuration and structure. However, in this rising phase that occurred in this new cycle, it was extremely bullish, and we actually repaired the negative overall structure when we came through that 78.6, which I will draw here from the swing high here of the prior cycle peak down to that swing low where the trough occurred. And you can see that we had multiple weeks on a closing basis above that 78.6, which had repaired then that overall cycle structure. On the pullback that we have had still during this overall rising, now peaking phase, it just got into that that first part of the support zone that we identify on the weekly chart. And more recently, we have seen the reversal scout weekly momentum indicator turn up as Square or Block released its earnings, and we see that momentum again turn up. So the overall, some of the evidence here on the weekly chart is with this recent cycle peak resistance breakout, overall cycle structure positive, momentum positive. We now have an overall bullish bias on the intermediate time frame. And I'm going to go over now to the daily chart. And it's within the daily chart that you can really get a sense of the more granular details. And this is really important that you are capable and have access to the right charting time frames and indicators that match up to your outlook period. So as I mentioned, I'm looking at more of a short term, but still 2 to 4 week outlook. And if I'm doing that, I really want to get into that daily chart time frame to be able to see some of those deeper details. So what we have going on here in the daily chart is that we wrapped up this daily cycle here, and it was fairly, it was very, very choppy scenario here. And we actually had a early low that came into place. We had one up day, and then we exploded higher on earnings. So that earnings report has pushed it above the prior cycle peak, both on the daily and on the weekly, shifting that cycle structures positive. Overall momentum now on the daily is also positive. You can see how, as Slim mentioned too, once that slim ribbon starts to expand out, it really does then let you know that something has changed and there's a strong momentum trend in place. So we would expect that slim ribbon to act as support if it does pull back into there. Right now, it's really holding and consolidating that initial rally, explosive pop gap that it had off of earnings. So now what we're looking at is, I'm looking at here, since we are still in the early rising phase, essentially, there's a lot of time in this cycle for to continue in its upward advance. And that upward advance, that up leg, has likely already started in that intermediate time frame. So over the next 2 to 4 weeks, I'm looking for a move into this first projection zone of around 87 to 90, with an outside chance as you get further out, maybe into that 3 or 4 week period of getting up into the secondary projection zone of 90 to 94. Now, where this comes from is the swing low, swing high analysis techniques that we use. So if we go back to the weekly chart here, and we use this cycle trough here low, and then that initial cycle peak here, we call this our minor cycle peak, and then the trough that was put in, and you can see that we have a first projection extension of 61.8 up here around 87, and then you get into that minor fib extension target zone of that 78.6 to 100. So that is what it would look like on that intermediate time frame. And then when you zoom in here on the daily, you can see that that first target zone of about 87 to 90. The reevaluation levels come in. If we see a close below 71, that would require me to reevaluate that upside projection. So I don't want to see it close below 71, which would be just below right now, that slim ribbon. And then if it breaks the 78.6 of this cycle low to this current cycle peak here, that is not the peak yet, we don't know that, but this is the high so far in the cycle. If we got a breakdown below that, that would warn me that the overall long side bias is in jeopardy. So that's what I'm looking at in an overall sum of the evidence perspective. And then when it comes to what signals suggest the trade setup is a go, we have our multi-time frame grid here going from left to right, a weekly chart, a daily chart, a 2-hour chart, and the 15-minute. Since our directional bias is driven by our weekly chart and our daily chart, and on both of those, as I've already explained, it is a very positive overall conditions. Then I would look at the 2-hour to give me some signals in terms of potential resumption opportunities. That would be the slim ribbon PO firing. That would be also, if the reversal scout turns back up, that would suggest to me that there's likely another up leg in motion. This is a scenario where over the next week or two, there could be some pullbacks, but ultimately, based on the current structures and momentum, we should see that continuation of the overall upside advance. That's a look at Square.